Hello everybody and welcome along once again to I think it's the 84th edition of the Rebel Wild Ball. I think we'll keep it going to 100 and then maybe pack it up. But anyway, that's for another day. I would actually think that those of you who live in the GA bubble or have an interest in that particular organisation, this is the quietest weekend of the 52 in 2022. From the very first day of the new year, you had the inter-county scene at the secondary competitions like the McGrath Cup and the FBD League, the McKenna Cup and the O'Byrne Cup, and mentioning only a few. Then it went on to the Alliance League, and that concluded last weekend. And it's amazing, you know, about as we said before, about the leagues, that the least exciting part of them is actually the end of them. Now, I know the two main finals that were played last weekend were the senior hurling and the Division 1 League final, and here Waterford gave Cork a bit of a trimming, and of course I know it caused Cork hurling fans and GA fans to, I suppose, reflect back, and maybe that some of the ills of Cork teams in the past haven't gone away, particularly the way Waterford got through for the easy goals. But do you know something? I think this league will be passed fairly quickly. And I remember a number of years ago, I think it was Kilkenny and Tipperary who played in a league final, and Kilkenny were absolutely flying at that time. And after they won the Division 1 league, there was several media commentators making the point, look, you might as well give them the Lee McCarthy Cup. Such was their dominance, and such was the, I suppose, maybe lack of opportunities for other teams, and the perception was that Kilkenny were going to walk the All-Ireland. Well, it didn't happen, and if any of us think that Waterford and Kerry are going to be the All-Ireland champions, we might have to think again. But other than Cork winning the All-Ireland hurling, wouldn't it be absolutely incredible, I think, for Waterford, the smallest hurling county by 100 miles in the country? They haven't won an All-Ireland since 1959. Who could begrudge them that? Yeah, they're good players and they played well the last night. Some of the Cork players, I think, performed a little bit below par, and like in terms of opportunities that were created, you know, looking down from wherever we were in Simple Stadium, you know, Cork did miss a couple of opportunities that I think on other days they would have won. So it all, as I said, this weekend absolutely nothing happening, but next weekend back in action, and the big game, of course, is going to be the game at 4 o'clock on Easter Sunday, and that is the match between Cork and Limerick, and I think that will tell everything for every other county about where this All Ireland is going to happen. If Limerick defeat Cork, well, that means Limerick are back with a bang. But anyway, that for another day, or maybe next week. The only thing that's happening at the moment is that these expenses row between the GPA and the GA seems to be ongoing, and the GPA are really trying to turn the screw by not taking part in any of these championship launches. Now, championship launches are only an opportunity for the sponsors to get their place in the sun. And to get a bit of media publicity from it. That's not happening, so that's obviously going to be a consideration for the GA when they're negotiating this settlement with this. I don't know whether they're a very powerful organisation or not, but and I'm not too sure, to be quite frank about it. The other, I suppose, debate that seems to interest us here in Cork is this whole situation about where the Munster football semi-final between Kerry and Cork are going to be played. A huge amount of people are under the impression that this game is going to go to Killarney. Well, I'm not too sure. And I know there are Cork people who believe firmly that Cork will be better off to go down to Killarney, take their trimming this year, and then that, you know, when the team is further developed on the road to wherever it's going, that Cork will be coming, that Killarney will be coming to Cork for the next two games. But this is this Cork team. They have made a decision, and no later than last night, a spokesman for them said, like, look, this is it, it's Páirc Uí Rinn are absolutely nowhere. So we're going to be watching with interest. I don't know, did somebody tell me there's some gathering of the Munster Council tonight. The big game this weekend, though, there is one game that concerns us, and that is the Division 1 Camogie League final between Cork and Galway. the two finals, the Division 2 final, which is between Antrim and Wexford. They both go ahead in Croke Park on Saturday evening. The first game is at 5:15 and the Cork game is at 7 o'clock. As you well know, there are 4 counties basically who operate at the top level of Camogie. That's Cork, Galway, Tipperary and Kilkenny, and maybe Tipperary are struggling a little bit at the moment as well. But anyway, Cork have been really impressive, in their victories. They defeated Clare and Limerick, who are operating at a lower level, and then in the big match in Portlakeeve, in their last, if we could use that term, round game, in a absolutely abysmal weather conditions, they drew with Kilkenny. But that was enough to get Cork through to the final. It was only the top team from their section, and Galway qualified from their group with victories over Tipperary, Down and Dublin. So look, there are a number of new players out coming into the Cork setup, and hopefully maybe 1 or 2 that were injured will come back. But look, at the end of the day, Cork have every bit of good a chance of winning. Terrible English, of winning the Camogie League next Saturday, and indeed the All-Ireland final, if you wish. So the only thing that operates this weekend around the country from a GA point of view is the club leagues, whether football or hurling leagues, and that will have to keep the punters entertained. Moving on then to soccer, and in the Champions League, Liverpool's drive for 4 continues. Almost unstoppable at this stage. They defeated Benfica 3-1 away, so that means that they're going to get through to the semi-final. They were the first leg of the quarter-finals. Man City 1-0 win over Atletico Madrid. 1-0. I don't know, is it enough? But the big story is the collapse of Chelsea. Beaten 4-1 by Brentford at the weekend, then beaten by Real Madrid last night, where Karim Benzema got a hat-trick, and ever since, this Ukrainian situation seems to affect Chelsea, and we'll watch with their game coming up in the Premier League. But that's basically it. And mentioning that Premier League tonight, on Saturday, Everton take on Manchester United, and for those Evertonians, they're, I think, 4th from the bottom, and there's a serious chance now that they could go down. They were beaten 3-2 last night by Burnley. They take on United. No, taking on United may not be the greatest challenge of all time. United have lost in the last 5 games, lost 2, drew 2 and won 1. And this, the new talk this morning, or for the last couple of days, is the impending appointment of a new manager, and a guy that I never heard of, and I can't even pronounce, Erik ten Hag, I think is his name, manager of Ajax, that he could be the new guy to take over the fledgling fortunes at Old Trafford. So anyway, that game is on Saturday. Arsenal, who are vying for that 4th spot with Spurs, their North London neighbours, suffered a serious defeat on Monday night when they're defeated by Crystal Palace. They take on Brighton. Chelsea's game at the weekend on Saturday is Southampton. Leeds and Watford, Watford are in the bottom 3, Leeds are a bit above Everton, so that's a huge game for them. And Spurs, as we mentioned, fighting for that 4th spot, are taking on Aston Villa. The big game on Sunday is without doubt going to be the one between Liverpool and Manchester City. Man City drive for 3, Liverpool, as we said, the drive for 4 to win 4 trophies. There's a point between them at the moment. City are 1 ahead. There were 12 points, I think, 14 points ahead of them earlier on in the year, and City have lost a few. Liverpool have been unbeatable, so there'll be huge interest in that one. In terms of the League of Ireland, that in the 9 teams in Division 1, there's always a weekend where a team is free. Well, Cork City are free this weekend, but they're doing really well on top of the league. But down at the bottom, poor old Cove, and they take on Waterford, who are in 3rd or 4th place. So it's testing times, no doubt, for Cove, and their season hasn't gone well at all for them, and they would need to be getting a couple of wins, I would suggest, fairly soon. Moving on to rugby, and it's the European Cup is back in action, where they're in the last 16. And the last 16 are made up of 7 English teams, 5 from France, and the 4 Irish teams. So the last 16 this is the most unusual setup for rugby, in that they're having a home and away. Now, all along what they had was, I think there was 8 groups of 4 and the top 2 qualified. That's all over now. Munster, the teams that qualified on top of their group, they were given an advantage in that they play their opponents home, away. They play their opponents in the opponent's ground first, and that was seen as being given an advantage. For example, this weekend, the 4 provinces are in action. You have Leinster, they're taking on Connacht in Connacht, and like you can only see one win there, and it's going to be the aggregate score. So, you know, like when a team travels away, they do what they have to do. They know then they're going to be in home turf the next day. Ulster finished top of their group, and they welcome they travel. They have Toulouse, and that's going to be they're one of the big strong. They're one of the strong French sides. And Munster season, I'm not too sure where it's going to be honest. They were really well beaten last weekend by Leinster. But then you have to take into account that Leinster is basically the Irish team, more or less, as far as I can see. And but this weekend they travelled to Sandy Park to take on Exeter, who were champions in 2020, I think, had a poor enough having a poor enough season in the Champions Cup. They won their 2 home games, lost their away games, but they did win last week over Bath, which might give them a little bit of confidence. But I think Munster can get through and get to the quarter final. I'm not too sure after that. And there's a lot of, I suppose there's a lot of uncertainty among some rugby people about what's happening in Munster. You know, their manager, Johan van Graan, is departing for Bath at the end of this season, and there doesn't seem to be a plan in place as what's going to replace him. So there's a bit of a transition period, if you like. But I would expect, having said all that, I think Munster would win that game, and we'll see what they have. And even if they don't, you know, that the fact that they're at home the next day is an advantage to them. For golfing fans, this is the dream weekend. The 86th edition of the US Masters, which is played in Augusta, and for those who don't follow golf but like watching beautiful sceneries and particularly azaleas, you can tune into this. It's starting today, and we have, it will go on. There'll be 2 rounds, tomorrow and Friday, and then they'll be talking about the cut. And we've 4 Irish players taking part in it. No Irish player has ever won this. Rory McIlroy has. This is the only major that he hasn't won, and you know, whether he wins it or not this time remains to be seen. The Irish guys involved in it obviously are him. You have Shane Lowry, who's actually, you know, having a very good season, and want to be some incredible story if Shane Lowry was to put on that green jacket in the butler's cabin. This is a bit of a shed they have down the bottom of some part of Augusta for this. So yeah, and then we have Padraig Harrington, but the real success story is Seamus Power. The producer of this particular broadcast, who's a serious golf fan, reckons that when we started first, that Seamus Power was about 450th place in the world, and to get into the play in the Masters, he had to be in the top 50. I think he got as far as he's 44th in the world. No, he's in there, and to play in the Masters, you nearly made. The prize money in this is about €10.5 million, and for the winner, €2 million. So they're not going to be stuck for a few bob. So there'll be the guy that won it last year, Matsuama, the Japanese fella. There's a tradition there with the past, 50 or 60 years, that whoever wins it, there's a champions dinner which was held on Tuesday night, and the winner has to choose them. Has to choose the menu. God, I'd said there was a fear of them. But anyway, that's the golf. For those of you who follow the fortunes of the horses, well, this is in National Hunt. This is as big as it gets. The biggest race in the world is the Grand National, and that takes place on Saturday. I think it's 5:15 in Aintree. Now, we're not going to be giving you any tips in it. Our neighbour across the road, Aidan Coleman, is riding Snow Leopardess. I think he's about 3rd favourite. Danny Mullins is up on a horse called Augusta Gold, so maybe that's one to go for. But of course the big story would be Manila Times with Rachel Blackmore on the saddle, and was she to repeat the feat of last season? Sure, look, you're talking about fairy tale stuff then. So that's it. It's, as I said, now the quietest weekend in terms of Gaelic games, but there's plenty other sports happening around the place and a lot that I have not mentioned here. So until we meet again, can I thank you for taking the effort to tune this way. Mind yourself and mind each other.